There's the thumbs up.
He gave us the thumbs up, Paul.
We're ready.
Ready. Good evening. Welcome to the January 13th, 2016 regular school board meeting for the Pullman School District. I'll lead the flag salute this evening. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Well, we have some important things going on tonight. We're going to change our, we think we're going to change our officers, so, and that's on our first item here. So I'll turn this over to Dr. Sturm.
Thank you. Just to begin with, I'd like to thank Dr. Everman, for his service as board president for the last 2 years. It's been a real pleasure to have an opportunity to work closely with you over the last 2 years as president, and I know that won't change, but we will have a little bit of a shuffle now, and perhaps, and what we are, according to School Board Policy 1210, the board must elect or re-elect a board president and board vice president on a yearly basis. And for 2016, we have a board rotation. Dean Kinzer is scheduled to be elected president, and Allison Munch-Rotolo scheduled to be elected vice president. And that's according to the officer rotation found in policy 1210. So in order to proceed, if that's the desire of the board, I suggest that we elect them separately, but you can do it any way you want. If there's a motion to approve a president-elect, then I would entertain a motion for that.
I move I nominate, or I move that Dean Kinzer be our president for the next term.
I second that.
All right, I will poll the board. Jim Everman.
Aye.
Thank you. Carl Johansson.
Aye.
Dean Kinzer.
Aye.
Allison Munch-Rotolo.
Aye.
And Susan Weed is absent tonight. Thank you. And if we proceed to elect the vice president, we need a motion for the election of a vice president.
I move that we elect Allison Munch-Rotolo for the vice presidency for the Pullman School Board.
I'll second that motion.
All right, I will poll the board. Jim Everman.
Aye.
Carl
Aye.
Johansson. Dean Kinzer.
Aye.
And Allison Munch-Rotolo.
Aye.
Thank you. Mr. Kinzer and Dr. Everman can change places, or at least pass the gavel. And I will say, Mr. Kinzer, we have had this opportunity before, and I look forward to our Wednesday meetings and working with you again as president of the board.
appreciate
So
that.
congratulations.
Thank you.
Are we ready to go forward?
Yep.
Okay. At this time, on the agenda, we have the next item, which is approval of the agenda. Are there any additions or
I'm not aware of any.
subtractions from that? Okay, if not, the chair would entertain a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve the agenda as presented. Any further comments, questions, or discussion? Hearing none, we'll proceed to vote. All those in favor of approving the agenda as presented, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Motion carried. That brings us to the next item on the agenda, which is for visitors. This is the part of the agenda that anyone wishing to speak before the board, either as an individual or as a member of a group, will address the board from the microphone, state their name, address, prior to presenting their information, and you're asked to limit your remarks to 3 minutes, please. And the board will listen but not discuss the topic at this time. but the board reserves the right to move that to a discussion item in a future meeting. Is there anyone that would like to approach the microphone and speak to the board as a visitor this evening? Okay, I'm not seeing anybody move, so we'll move on to the next item on our agenda, which is reports, correspondence, and programs. Superintendent Sturm, did you, PHS ASB report, is that the next item? Were you going to present that?
Well, typically we go with board members first, but I'm happy to go in a different order.
Okay. That would work. We'll have board reports first. Dr. Everman, have you got a board report for us this evening?
Well, I have two comments. I went to the presentation on Monday evening at the League of Women Voters for Pullman, and Dr. Sturm presented the levy and the bond information, and there was a group of maybe 25 people there, and it was a great presentation, laid it out very nicely, the reasons for the levy and how we were going to meld it in with the overall, the next election, the levy in the future, with the tech levy. And then also the reasons that we were floating the bond at this particular time because of several factors, the mandates coming from the state, our overpopulation of students, like 450 kids. So we've simply outgrown our current facilities, and I thought you did a great job. So I wanted to thank you again for doing that. And then also, we're getting some increased publicity from, guess it, the Daily Evergreen. It was on the front page this morning that voters to decide the outcome of the elementary school proposal. So I think, and then there was a piece in the paper last week about the bus trafficking around Sunnyside and the congestion that's being created by overpopulation. So I think without us even voting, there's enough press that's coming out in terms of why we should do this at this time. So I'm hoping the voters will get out and vote, and we'll see what happens. But thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you, Jim. Dr. Johansson.
Well, just the excitement of walking into the building and getting lost for the first time. And then the excitement for a new stage to be unfolding out my office window just across the football field. Looking forward to when the Pac-Man munch machine starts in on, I assume that's waiting on asbestos abatement for roof. So hopefully we'll stay where they can keep working and we can stay on schedule as we have been almost from the start. Also had the opportunity to attend the Lions meeting. Again, as Jim said, a lot of good questions, support. I thought it was interesting that one of the questions was totally in favor of what was being proposed. Questioning though the idea of full-time kindergarten. Of course, even if I wasn't personally aware of the data that supports the need for it, it's also in state law, and we're one way or the other, we're going to have it by 2018 or 17. So the board, I think last fall, unanimously moved forward with starting this fall to get a year, and we've already been in preparation. I know of that, and I'm excited for that to be happening, because in my previous work before I came here, I was well aware of and working with schools and kids that were already suffering from behavioral problems and so on. Well aware of the validity of the need for greater structure and also learning of basics at that level. And it will be, as we all probably in the room know, much more than daycare. or half-day kindergarten, half-day daycare. That's not what full-time kinder is, and so heavily and personally in favor of it, and looking forward to when our district is involved.
Thank you, Carl. Appreciate that report. Dr. Muncher-O'Toole?
No report, thank you.
And I don't have a report this evening either. So we'll move on to the superintendent's report. Dr. Stern?
All right, I think I'm back with the agenda. My apologies. When you said PHS ASB report, I missed the ASB part, and we typically have a Pullman High School PHS construction report, and that usually comes later, so I confused myself. My apologies. Desiree Gold, Assistant Principal at Pullman High School, will introduce the ASB reporters tonight.
Good evening. Tonight we have Nora and Ivy, and they'll be talking a little bit about where we are with a couple of different things and answer any questions you have.
Okay, so I don't know if you have heard before, but we're raising money to build a school in Nicaragua for brick, and we are organizing a fundraiser, Are You Smarter Than a Fifth Grader? It's going to be on February 5th, which is a Friday, at 6 o'clock in the gym here. And we are having, we actually were at Sunnyside earlier today. We're getting about 30 kids from fifth graders from the elementary schools and 10 teachers from the entire school district, and they're going to be participating in the competition. And it's going to be $3 per person at the door, so we're hoping to raise some money doing that.
And there's also a dance that the Pullman High Black Student Union is hosting, and it's a whiteout dance, and it's just to raise funds and what's the word? Kind of gain get people to know that there's a club that now exists in PHS, like gain publicity. There we go. There, yeah.
And then members of the ASB and the BSU are also attending the Legislative Youth Action Committee, which is next weekend or 2 weeks from now.
10 days.
10 days, yeah.
Where is that being held at?
It's in Olympia. We actually we go over, we stay the night. You'll have a thing in there later that'll sign. Stay the night, and we work with the LIAC people. We have one representative from Pullman that's actually on the LIAC committee who flies over quarterly and meets with other students from around the state. And then we'll get on, so on Sunday, we'll work with students from around the state, talking about issues that are important to students. And then on Monday, we'll actually get opportunities, we're hoping to get opportunities to meet with legislators, tours of the Capitol and things like that, learn how a bill gets formed. And Daisy, who's our representative over there, she actually wrote a bill that's being supported by LIAC, so we'll be helping her to promote her bill.
What's the nature of the bill?
The nature of the bill is a requirement of sexual health education with factual components to it. We already do it, so we're already there, but not every school, it's not required right now.
Any
Awesome.
further comments or questions?
No, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We really appreciate the continued participation.
Thank you.
It really adds.
Okay, I'm going to change up the superintendent's report a little bit with move right into the technology update, and then I'll come back. So Garen Shannon, our technology director, will present.
Have a second to pull this up. And put on my eyes. While I'm doing this, I will add to Dr. Johansson's point. My mother would be happy to hear kindergarten, all-day kindergarten, as a early child development specialist for decades. She is all for that. The earlier we can help, the better. Keep this out. well, oh, I know what it is. Too many passwords. There we go. So I want to say thank you to the school board for inviting me to present here. We got a lot of really interesting things. And I'm going to run into a problem here, Paul. I should have stayed on. I'll pull this back up for you here in just a second. Sorry, I had this all set up just a second ago. And now it's going to wait forever. Speaking of the queue, that will be part of the conversation.
Why don't we move on to full day K preparation, and while we're waiting for Garen and Bob.
Thank you.
Bob has a little report here.
Just want to give with the comment about full day kindergarten, just to let you know, we've been having monthly meetings, teachers, kindergarten teachers, another separate meeting with administrators as well, support staff, and planning and preparation for the implementation of full day kindergarten next year. And I really appreciate the principals taking the time, the teachers working together, along with food service, technology, transportation, that been part of those meetings and planning. Also next month, our teachers, current kindergarten teachers, will be taking a field trip to the Cheney School District to look at their full day implementation. That's been ongoing, and so they'll get a little hands-on experience with seeing how they operate their full day kindergarten program, and what may be some of the barriers and what are some of the successes. So they'll have a hands-on field trip next month. And Stephanie Bray, our TOSA and curriculum instruction, has helped orchestrate that, as well as putting together a planning guide for not only staff but parents as well. And so that's under development and being refined at this time.
And that was quick. So again, thank you for inviting me up here. It's been a while since I've had the opportunity to present. This last year, 2015, has been a definite year of change. We've seen a lot of significant change in pretty much every aspect of it. An auspicious occasion, first meeting here for the board in this new facility. This facility has been long in coming and is still very challenging. And we've been working with construction folks here to make this whole process work a little bit better and fit our future needs as well. And so it's been a learning curve on my part, and I'm sure on Dan and Mr. Thornton, principal. So everybody involved has been pressed. The IT department has equally been pressed. We have had a lot of change over this year. I've had staffing change, and I have some new faces. 2 new field techs, Ryan Dunlop, who actually came here because he was looking to bring his kids into this district. He came all the way from LeGrand, Oregon, so quite a trek for him, but he saw the Pullman School District and wanted to bring his children here and applied for a position. He was our best candidate, and I am so pleased that we hired him. Matt Heisler was a student at WSU, returning after a degree in poli-sci to get a degree in computer science, and decided he had had a little bit too much school over a 6-year period, and decided to go back to work for a little bit. He worked for the Kent School District for a short period, primarily out of high school and during summers, similar to the intern program that we are developing here. So he looked for the job, was selected, an excellent hire. Again, good folks. Chance Hyatt, who's sitting in the audience here, is our assistant administrator and a lifesaver. Really nice to have the solid talent that this gentleman brings to our district. So again, we have a lot of things that have changed. I wanted to give you a quick update on what I call the year of Chrome. We have had a massive movement in the Chrome platform, and you may have heard some of the activity that we've done over the past year. I think we have added somewhere around 600 Chrome devices to our network. We currently have, as you note, the accounts here, 3,391 active accounts in the Google Apps for Education domain. We have 29,000 active documents. These are internal documents that students and staff share and work between their courses and their student bodies. So there's a lot of activity out there. That's a lot of activity for a district this size. And we now have 848 Chrome devices across our district, and we're growing more as we go. This pushes our support to approximately 800, and I believe that that number is actually low. We're probably over 800, or 1,800 rather, devices. So we've got a lot of activity going on, and this will become important, especially as we move and press more and more into the wireless network world. So I've got a little more information on that coming as well. Another big shift that we just recently pushed out is a utility program called School Dude. For the past few years, I've been using a program to manage and track all of the IT jobs that my staff and I manage and take care of district-wide. It is a lot of work, but I've always felt that I was falling short on the maintenance side, and so I looked for a tool that could support maintenance, and the application that came boiling up was a tool called School Dude. School Dude supports ticketing, job ticketing for both the IT side and the maintenance side. It has an inventory tracking system for both IT and maintenance, which is going to benefit the district over time as we start collecting more and more heuristic data about the kind of activity that this district does. And it's about time that we put on our big boy pants and put a system in place. It also has a resource scheduling system that we can keep internally or open to the public for scheduling things like the use of facilities like this, or boardroom meetings, or gyms, or football fields, or the list goes on and on. So all of these things combined make the tool a very effective tool. So far, just this week, we opened it, started going this week, Monday rather. We've already closed 27 tickets on the IT side. So it's seeing a lot of use, and we're starting to track a lot of data in there. So you'll hear more about that. Now the big news is a network upgrade. The last time that we did a network upgrade, as you might recall, was approximately 9 years ago, when we pulled a brand new phone system that predicated a upgrade of the network to make that system functional. We moved from an old PST phone system to a new digital system. Today, we maintain that system through the same network, but the network is now dated. And at that time, that was a $500,000 project. This project, this time, is going to be about $370,000. It is every single closet, every single network component replacement. So we're really upgrading everything. Last time we didn't quite do that extensive, but this is a complete network revision. This new plan will bring 10 gigabit backbone, which is a lot of capacity. In my remaining years till I retire, I doubt that we will ever tap the need, but this is the next step, so this is where we're going. It will support a density designed wireless network model here. In other words, we'll be able to handle any number of network devices district-wide. Most people don't realize that just because we have 846 Chromebooks, that's our entire scope of our wireless. But the fact is that every student in this building that comes in carries one of these, if not two, and sometimes three. The numbers are approximately 1,000 active devices on the network at any given time during the day at this building alone. This is permeated throughout the district, and now we're starting to see these same sort of devices in the elementary classrooms. And so this wireless network model is an absolute priority to moving forward and keeping us alive. The best point here is that a year ago, the FCC modified their E-rate program to allow for a focus on wireless internal connections, Tier 2. So we put forward a program to take advantage of that, and we won an award. The federal E-rate program is going to pay for 50% of this entire project. So that in itself is a big program. So that is all I really have. And
So is that 370,
thousand
is that the full price, or is that the
full
half that we
full
pay?
price?
So
That's
half of that?
half of that is what we pay for. That's correct. So they are paying for. I think we had funding for $168,000 exactly. I'm rounding it a little bit there.
That's our cost.
That's our cost, right? And we built capacity into the budget to handle that last year, so we are well seated to be able to take advantage of this. And this will be. I just got off the phone with our kickoff meeting this afternoon. We are looking at a late March, early April time frame for rolling this network up and pushing it out. It is a stem to stern, everything installed. Cables, patch cables, switches, engineering, the whole 9 yards. My staff and I will have to do very little other than give guidance. So, and we're going to take full advantage of that and let the company do the engineering for us. We just give them parameters. So,
Awesome.
I promise I'd keep it down.
Thank you.
Do you have any questions?
Guess not. Thank you very much, Karen.
You are welcome.
Thanks, Karen.
I need to log back in because
Yeah.
I have everything. I got to log back in. Our tech director kicked me out.
In the meantime, Chance will be printing out some more of those 28,000 documents and counting them.
So I've got a couple of items, and I just have a couple of visuals that I wanted to show to you. So I'm going to try to pull those up, and I'll try to continue with my report while I'm waiting for those to come back up. Except that I can't do two things at once here. Sorry about that. There we go. All right, so I can't really add a whole lot to what Carl said about Pullman High School construction. It's on track, it's on schedule. It almost wasn't, but when on January 4th, but it was. So we made it. I think I mentioned that to the board at the work session. A lot of work, a lot of credit goes to Joe Thornton, many other people, but especially Joe, for coordinating and making sure that people were in place, things were in place, and that the work got done, and the move in. And there's not a whole lot more we need to say. I mean, this is a fantastic room to be in. Even though this is not the permanent boardroom, it hasn't been built yet, this is a nice space to have our board meeting in. So making progress. We have a number of things that will be coming online in about a month and a half, including the theater, and it may be at that point that the board begins to meet in the theater. It's a little easier for our broadcast setup in the theater. We could meet in the gym, but sometimes there's a basketball game in there, so that doesn't work out so well.
Invitational wrestling, it looks
Yeah,
like.
there you go, wrestling. So we may be having our board meetings moved to the theater sometime in March, so stay tuned for that. As Carl pointed out, over the winter break, Joe and his staff moved out of what's left of the bulk of Pullman High School, the existing Pullman High School, move people out of the temporary classrooms into their new classrooms, and move people out of the old part of the school into temporary classrooms in the old gym. And so that transition took a couple of weeks, and we had a lot of people and a lot of activity over that period of time. So thank you, Joe, for your work on that. Jefferson Elementary School is also progressing. We don't really have anything new that I'm aware of. Dan, is there anything new on Jefferson? And then Dr. Everman also mentioned the bond and levy presentations. We had 3 in 2 days, and they were pretty significant ones. We had the League of Women Voters on Monday. We had the chamber at noon on yesterday, and then we talked with the city council last night. So those are important. They're all important, but those were probably larger audiences than some of the others that we get to. So I just wanted to share quickly with you some illustrations that we've received from Design West Architects, and these you've seen. So this is, I'm just a reminder because I'm going to do a comparison. These are the original illustrations, concept illustrations, and again, this is not what the school necessarily will look like, and I think it's important to say that. There's a lot of study and a lot of input that needs to be gained from the community before we actually land on a design. This is just to give an illustration of what's possible on that site. In other words, to make sure people understand that the site will accommodate an elementary school. And so those are the images. I'm going to close that one out, and this is a new one that we received yesterday, I believe. And you'll notice the footprint's smaller. If you look at this gray area in there, the footprint is smaller. That's because this is a 2-story concept. And there are pros and cons. We've had some conversation with Design West Architects about some of the pros and cons. The biggest advantage is that it consumes less of the site. There's some advantages in terms of mechanical systems when you're 2-story. But there are also some disadvantages in terms of access and circulation and those kinds of things. So we just wanted to show you that we have another concept to consider, and run through those quickly. That really the same amenities in both schools, just a different configuration of the classrooms. Yes.
The involvement at this point of Design West and how far that goes in relationship to potential success of the bond, would you outline that for me?
Sure.
I know they've been, they really helped successfully and designed the addition to Franklin when we did it, but just if you could lay that out more also for the board and also for the public that might be listening in.
For the Jefferson Elementary project, the scope of that, we didn't have to go out for an RFQ. And for this preliminary pre-bond work, likewise, the scope of this work is not such that we had to go out for an RFQ to do this. For the scope of designing the elementary school, after financing is secured, we will have to propose an RFQ and go through a process to formally select an architect. And Design West is aware of that. We've had that conversation with them, and that was on the advice of our project manager. We checked with them to make sure that we were dotting our I's and crossing our T's correctly, and we need to do that RFQ. But we won't do that until we know we have financing. There really isn't, this is not real design work. It's basically looking at at concepts that might work on a site.
And they've been working too on all of the permits and variances that might have to do with the site and.
Yeah,
So-
they've helped us with some studies of the environmental studies and soil studies and things like that, yeah. So with that, anything else, Dan, you think of, Bob, related to bond and levy? And we did have the bond and levy committee the Citizens for Pullman Schools Committee had a meeting on Monday afternoon and laid out some of its final plans for getting the word out to the community. So we'll see more activity with that. And finally, but maybe most importantly for my part is, in case you didn't know, this is School Board Recognition Month. And we have a proclamation from our governor that I'd like to read. And we do this every year, and we just take this opportunity to formally appreciate our board and recognize our board and the work that they do. Most people don't see the amount of work that you all do behind the scenes. And it's considerable. Just preparation for this meeting alone takes a considerable amount of time and effort. Reading through the packet, at least one board member each month, or actually before each board meeting, goes through all the warrants and checks those off, asks questions, mostly of Dan, about money and how it's being spent and that sort of thing. So there's a lot of work and study sessions and meetings in Olympia and committees that you participate in. So we really do appreciate the work that you do. And from Governor Jay Inslee, whereas the mission of Washington Public School System is to assure that all students achieve at high levels and possess the knowledge and skills to be responsible citizens and enjoy productive and satisfying lives, and whereas Washington's 295 locally elected school boards and 9 elected educational service district boards are the core of the public education governance system in our state, and whereas the districts and the regions they lead serve more than 1 million students, have a combined annual budget of nearly $11 billion, and employ 160,000 people. And whereas school directors play a crucial role in promoting student learning and achievement by creating a vision, establishing policies and budgets, and setting clear standards of accountability for all involved. And whereas school directors are directly accountable to the citizens in their districts and regions, serving as a vital link between members of the community and their schools. And whereas school directors and educational service directors provide a passionate voice of advocacy for public schools and the welfare of school children. And whereas it is appropriate to recognize school directors as outstanding volunteers and champions for public education, now therefore I, Jay Inslee, Governor of the Washington State, do hereby proclaim January 2016 as School Board Recognition Month. So thank you again, and on behalf of Governor Inslee, we deliver that message. So thank you very much for all you do. And I'm going to bring around a certificate of recognition for each one of you. And while I'm doing that, I think Sunnyside Elementary is up next, so if you want to get prepared. At least on my list, unless you guys have a different place agreement. So, Allison.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
And my, where's my folder? Pardon me. Thought I had them all in my hand. There we go. So Dean? Thank you. Thank you. Carl?
Put this on the frame in front of the one from last year.
Do we
It's
need
always
to
a
get
pleasure.
thicker frame? For Carl, I think we need a thicker frame.
No, I only keep the last couple of years.
So our next agenda item for under reports is school improvement plans, and Pam Brantner will talk to us about Sunnyside.
All right, we just made a few changes this year. The main change is, I think I always tell you that we look at RTI as kind of our umbrella, and underneath that we have the academic pieces and then the behavioral pieces as well. And so one of our main, we looked at like a 2% increase per grade level. We just didn't feel that was, we met the goal last year, and we felt we needed to have a stronger goal. So we broke our K through 5 will have 85% or more will meet or exceed the projected point increase as recommended per grade level for both math and reading on MAPS data. And so we're looking at kindergarten will progress and make at least a 15-point growth, and then first grade a 12% or a 12-point growth. Second 11, third 10, fourth 8, and fifth will make an 8-point growth as well. Our goal is to be above the recommended level. And last year, like I said, we met that at 80%, so we bumped it up to the 85 and hopefully continue to get up to 100 eventually. And the way that we intend to meet that is through our professional development and some things that we have in place through our RTI committees. And so just having students, we're looking at all academics. We look at our students that are in the tier 1, tier 2, 3, and really have been focusing on plugging in interventions that we feel are a success and staying focused on those interventions. In the past, we would try something. If it didn't work, we would try something else. And so it just became a confusion for students. And so we just wanted to really narrow that focus. And some of the things that we could say were an intervention are Read 180, and we're seeing tremendous growth this year with that. I just had a conversation with some students, and Dr. Maxwell was in there, and we have some kids that have made 200-point growth from the beginning of the year till now on their Lexile score, and they're so excited. I happened to be talking to one of them, and I said, what do you like about this program? You know, somebody asked me, and they're like, Mrs. B, I can finally read. I can figure it out, and it's got writing, and they like the software components that go with it and the stories, so we're really seeing a good growth and engagement with students. So that's one of our key pieces. And then the professional development, Dr. Sturham talked about, or Dr. Maxwell talked about the kindergarten teachers going to Cheney to do some investigation on all-day kindergarten. We'll also be going to a Struggling Readers Thrive conference next week, and then also looking at WA Kids on March 2nd. So those are some of the things we have in place. And then thinking ahead to our behavior portion, we have, as you saw in the newspaper, there was a big conversation about congestion at Sunnyside. So along with behavior in school, we have parents that join us to have a parent advisory committee, and we also have a student advisory committee that meet once a month to talk about what are the concerns at Sunnyside, which then in turn affect our behaviors, and then what we can do to meet those concerns. Today I actually met with my student advisory committee, and it was interesting to hear. We talked about strengths, areas of growth, and safety concerns. And one of the strengths I heard from one of my students was, Mrs. B, I don't think we have any bullies at our school. I think they're just mishaps. That was her exact wording, that they were mishaps. And then it was kind of interesting because on Monday, I believe it was, the principals were talking about the term bullying and how it's sometimes overused in the public and not that the definition is really out and about. And so the group had a good conversation about that. We have grades 3 through 5, and we have one in each grade level. So there were 9 students in there today. And they said, you know, when you're outside and you get in a fight with your friend, that's just a fight with your friend. You might not just talk to them for 3 weeks. But if a bully means someone that they're just constantly bothering you, I said, this is great. This is what we need to get out. So these are the type of things that we're trying to put into place to work with our behavior issues. We've also implemented something called Job Corps, which Rosalie Waters started quite a few years ago, and then it kind of went by the wayside, and we activated that, and so kids now have jobs during the recess, and just becoming more of a community. And so we're having that buy-in, and we're having less behavioral issues. So that's kind of where we're at and the direction we're going.
Awesome. Good. Thank you.
Very good. Thanks, Dan.
Thanks, Matt.
Depending on what list you looked at, I saw Franklin Elementary first on one list or another, and I was excited about that because I hate following Pam. She's so comprehensive and detailed and that sort of thing. One of the things I noticed in the draft that I sent you, I didn't update dates and percentages on this first page, and I won't spend much time dwelling on that, actually. Those aren't the most important things I wanted to talk about as far as updates. Exciting times in the school district. I think I probably say that every time I come up here, but we have several new staff members at Franklin Elementary, and we've really got just a great thing going right now. I think one of the strongest staffs I've ever worked with, both young teachers and experienced teachers and that kind of thing. So it's been a lot of fun, and in this document, we talk about and have been working towards some things that we started a few years ago, and examples of that would be PBIS steps and strategies, and we've talked about utilizing data more intentionally, and this year we were able to bring Swiss on board for us as well. You've all seen presentations from Sunnyside. They've been using it for a while. So we're up to a couple hundred referrals at this point, where we've encouraged people to turn in referrals. Let's get used to the system and that kind of thing. And so we actually did our first initial data analysis step this morning at a staff meeting, and it's really helping us take a look at what and where and who and how things are happening behaviorally. So that's pretty exciting, and that's in there. We're continuing work around the book study that we did last year, and and the whole notion of social emotional learning, and then emotional safety and well-being of students and that kind of thing. So we actually reran the book study again this year with so many new staff members, and we not every single person has participated, but a really high percentage of folks have. Nancy Nelson was gracious enough to do that this fall, and out of that we've actually grown our second step implementation as well, which is another part of our goal. So we're actually utilizing second step in classrooms clear up through fourth grade now, and that fourth grade came on board by doing the second step book study this fall, actually, and at the end of our discussion decided that second step would be a great complement to be able to continue that curriculum, and to it turns out that at the fourth grade level in second step, the word is empathy. It's all about empathy and learning how to empathize with your fellow students and that sort of thing. So pretty excited about that, and that that growth has been as much voluntary as anything else, and I guess I'm even more excited about that teachers are taking on that extra role and responsibility, presenting those lessons themselves, and then utilizing the language and walking the walk with their students as they deal with things daily. The last thing I would speak to, I guess, is also professional development, and with so many new teachers and then so much to learn, we've included some parts and pieces in those same areas that Pam was talking about, and actually Pam, Craig, and I will be doing some more work on some proposals for professional development even this Friday. But we have professional development, again, kindergarten work in literacy, and then moving forward and implementing that. More work this year at grades 3, 4, and 5 proposed in SBAC, implementing interim assessments and evaluating those and helping students get ready for the way they'll be doing the measures that we're using at this time. And then lastly, we're proposing and working to put together a professional development opportunity that's related to the district approved list of interventions for reading. And it was determined at our through our SIP process that teachers wanted more information and they wanted to be more adept at helping other teachers utilize some of those interventions and to create some opportunities ongoing for everyone to get more used to how to utilize those resources. So I do want to thank Bob while I'm thinking about SIT and that kind of thing. That's another piece that we've taken some really large steps in, and I'd like to recognize Bob for his leadership there, and also the I will call it the relentless application of general pressure or whatever, helping us maintain some forward movement there, and then also TOSA's Stephanie Bray and Megan Natani for their assistance in those processes and with Swiss and that sort of thing. They've been really instrumental in us making some great strides forward, and our SIT team is functioning much more efficiently and much more effectively this year than it has at any time recently. So I have a lot of different people to thank for that. A good staff, good team, but also that support from the district office. So that's kind of where we are right now. So yeah, questions?
Questions or comments for Bill?
Excellent.
Yeah.
Thank you, Bill.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bill.
Well, thank you for the opportunity to come and speak to you again tonight about our school improvement plan. I do want to say, and we're going to hear a lot of things because I have the professional pleasure to work with two of the finest principals in the state. We work together a lot. We coordinate a lot of things. And I just want to say it's just a pleasure always to work with these two fine people. But with our student school improvement plan, over the past few years, we've done a 92% rate to be achieved 3 years from now. And we've cut that back to saying, what's our goal this year? It's going to come back, so we've just changed that philosophy. And it really is about using the data. We test kids a lot, but we need to generate that data so that we can create individual plans for the kids who aren't making it. And so with the use of our RTI teams, SIT team, to identify the needs and then to develop those individual plans to help those kids make it is really the focus behind both our math and our reading school improvement goals. And really the changes, the increased incorporation of the, we call it the RTI committee, but it's the same as the SIT team, the student intervention team or response to intervention team. But to bring that into more and more pieces of this individualization to, what can we do to help each student reach their full potential? And that's the focus of all of that. We do have, you've heard me talk before about the self-manager plan and the behavior piece, and I just want to say that this year we've incorporated what we call the Jaguar Huddle. So every Wednesday morning, I would encourage any of you to come on a Wednesday morning if you'd like, to come see what the Jaguar Huddle is all about, but we just kind of remind them about either specific pieces of the behavioral expectations that need a little bit more focus, or we review the components of the self-manager plan that make Jefferson just a great place to learn and grow. The whole self-manager plan is based around this book by Marvin Marshall, and the high school looked into this before, but we've really developed it into quite a thing, basically about how to get kids to own their own discipline. Discipline isn't something that comes from outside, it's something you generate from inside. And how do we teach that, and how do we reinforce it, and how do we do those things? And so this has just been the book that we've done book studies on. We're going to do another book study in the spring on it. Just mostly as a reminder, we haven't had a lot of turnover at Jefferson. We had a little bit, and the new teachers have qualified for the BEST program, and so we've been able to send them to Spokane and get them acquainted with other first-year teachers and have mentors for them in the classroom. And so that's been really nice on our end to be part of that program. But the Marvin Marshall thing, it also comes with a weekly email. So a little update from Marvin Marshall coming at us every week to kind of say, did you ever think about this? Or this is what's worked at this place, this is where it's worked at that place. So it's been kind of a constant improvement kind of a thing. I have talked about it enough, and in my closing, are there any questions?
Comments or questions?
I just want to give you all a self-manager band. So if you come to Jefferson, you can you can go out to recess early with one of these.
Wonderful.
There you go. Oh, throw 'em around.
I'm looking down your list here, you're assuming a lot. Especially when you come to the next person after Allison.
Well, self-manager band can be taken away at any time, too.
Just try to get it off.
Over my cold, whatever the quote is.
All right, anything else from,
And they are cold now here.
I think we're
Okay,
good.
very good. If you'll indulge me for just a minute, I just had a letter passed to me from the Professional Educator Standards Board of the state of Washington. It was sent to Dr. Everman in December, but it's a recognition for Dr. Bob Maxwell. It says, "Dear Mr. Everman, the Professional Educator Standards Board was authorized by Substitute Senate Bill 6129, passed in the 2014 legislative session to convene a work group to develop and design programs specific minimum employment standards for paraeducators, professional development, and education opportunities that support the standards and career ladder for paraeducators and professional development for certificated employees that focus on maximizing the success of paraeducators in the classroom. It is our pleasure to recognize Bob Maxwell for his service as the paraeducator subcommittee on this Paraeducator Subcommittee, which was convened to address the requirements of Senate Substitute Bill 6129. Bob displayed outstanding collaboration skills in working as a cohesive team member and providing great ideas to help move the required work forward. You can be proud that he represented your district well in this effort. The report with recommendations from the subcommittee will be submitted to the legislator by January 10th, 2016. Without Bob's valuable expertise and contribution, this work would not have been completed. Thank you for allowing Bob to participate in this project and help support the improvements of K-12 education in the state of Washington. Sincerely, Damian Patnott, I don't know how you pronounce that.
Yep.
Okay, and Joan L. Adams. So,
I
thank
didn't
you,
know
Bob.
we allowed Bob to do that, but right on.
Thank you.
Quite a nice surprise. From there, I forgot even what.
Thank you, Bob. Appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
This brings us to the consent agenda, and the consent agenda is used to expedite business at our board meetings, and the board approves the use of consent agenda, which includes items considered to be routine in nature. Any item which appears on the consent agenda may be removed from the consent agenda by any one member and voted on separately. Remaining items will be voted on by a single motion. Tonight's consent agenda consists of minutes of our last meeting and our work session also, budget status report, warrants, expense warrants, records destruction, personnel reports, and professional and personnel service reports. I'll get that out yet. Does anyone have anything they'd like to pull from the consent agenda? If not, I would entertain a motion.
I would move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
I'll second that.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda as presented. Is there any further comments, questions, or discussion? Hearing none, we'll proceed to vote. All those in favor of approving the consent agenda as presented, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Motion carried unanimously. Thank you. That brings us to our action items this evening. The first action item is 3226 interviews and interrogations of students on school premises policy. To present that is Superintendent Sturm.
This is a new policy recommended by our Washington Association of School Directors Association, the policy committee there, and it is in line with our practice, but it is a policy that didn't exist that we need to add to our policy manual. It has to do with interactions with law enforcement.
And I know we've looked at this before. I'm curious if you can actually see that from where you're sitting.
I could read it from here.
Really? Okay. I'm struggling, and since we don't have internet, and so this is the second board meeting well, the last one I could read the board, but this one yeah, it's just kind of, I'm wondering if we might have to temporarily switch to paper until we get internet.
You know what we can do
or-
is, we have plenty of space in here.
Move the date.
Or move for the next meeting.
We don't have to be this
Okay.
far away.
Okay. Yeah, and like I said, it's fine because we have reviewed this before, but if this was any kind of new information, I would feel really uncomfortable.
Can you read it now? I made
Yeah,
it,
yeah, I can.
I made it a little bit larger.
Yeah.
But we'll just rearrange the room for our next meeting so that we're closer.
Okay. Can you see it, Dan?
I had a little bit of trouble, and to be honest with you, before everybody got here, I tried to move everything a little forward. So I think it's a good comment.
Okay. I did just have my vision checked. I don't know what to say.
Well, I have my glasses on, so. Although they don't have any correction for distance.
Yeah.
We've got space.
Yeah.
Okay.
We are farther away from the screen than we were in the other room.
Yeah. Or do you know when there will be internet, or?
It should be working right now. I didn't try because I don't, are you on?
It kicked me off. I was on earlier, but I downloaded it and I've got it in front of
Well,
me.
the IT department just left. They
No,
prob-
we talked to them. They
Oh.
just said, too bad.
I'm on. It's weak, it's not great, but
Yeah.
it's something.
I'll try my other device too.
We'll see what we can do to get that. It should be working, so I don't know why it isn't. We'll try to get that on for
But
next
in
week.
any case, yes, that's neither here nor there, this policy.
Is there anything else we need to know about this policy?
I move approval of policy 3226, interviews and interrogation of students on school premises.
I'll second.
Okay. It's been moved and seconded to adopt policy 3226, interviews and interrogation of students on school premises. Is there any further comments, questions, or discussion? Hearing none, we'll proceed to vote. All those in favor of the standing motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Motion carried unanimously. That brings us to action item B, which is dealing with policy 4310, relations with law enforcement and child protective agencies. To present that is Superintendent Sturm.
And these are recommended, again, we discussed this at our last board meeting, but these are recommended clarifications and language housekeeping to this policy. Really in my mind, not a real change in substance, but clarifications to this policy in line with likely some changes in either statute or case law.
Any comments or questions on that?
Mr. Chairman, I would move adoption of policy 4310, relations with law enforcement and child protective agencies.
I second that.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that we approve revisions to policy 4310, relations with law enforcement and child protective agencies. Any further comments, questions, or discussion? Hearing none, we'll proceed to vote. All those in favor of the standing motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Motion carried unanimously. That brings us to item C on our action items, which is policy 1410, executive or closed sessions. To present that is Superintendent Sturm.
And this is also a bit of a update and clarification from WASDA. What it does is it separates out our policy in the past. Let's see, make sure I have this right. No, I was thinking I was on a different policy.
This is 1610.
Did I open the wrong one?
Yeah, you opened the next one. You want to go to 1410. You skipped over.
Sorry. I guess I can't see it very well.
See?
I started talking about it, and then as I was reading it, it didn't make sense with what I was saying. Okay, so this is a recommended clarification from our, again, from WASDA, distinguishing between executive and closed sessions and what's permitted in each one of those. So most of the comments on the site are formatting changes, and you can see the new language is in red there. And again, this was discussed at our last school board meeting. And I don't know, if I make it any larger, we'll lose it off the screen.
I did call our WASDA legal advisor today on this particular policy just for some clarification, because yesterday in a meeting that I was a chairman of, it's not a government agency. I had to look up whether we were allowed to vote in executive session or not. And according to Robert's rules, page 95, latest edition, you are allowed to vote in executive session. And so I called our legal policy, the policy director over at WASDA today, and asked her what the issue was there. And she says the Open Public Meetings Act trumps Robert's rules on that issue.
Yeah.
So we cannot. So our policy is correct.
Now, I don't believe since I've been on the board we've ever had a closed session. We've only had executive sessions, but are we going to try to
Delineate, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're going to try to do a little better at delineating the difference
Okay.
between a closed session and an executive session, yes.
Yeah, we tend to use the executive session as the phrase for both, and
Right.
we really should distinguish between the two.
I feel, although I'm completely comfortable with the policy, I do not feel like I could whip out these exact phrases from memory. So I would love to see like
I agree.
a quick summary that a person chairing a meeting could refer to and use the correct legal phrase.
Yeah, a prompting sheet of something,
Yeah.
yes.
We'll put that together. That's easy to do.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And Dean, thank you for making that call and making sure you are clear on what the intention, yeah. it's-
Any further comments, questions, discussion on policy 1410? I would entertain a motion to approve revisions to policy 1410.
I move approval of the policy 1410 executive or closed sessions.
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that we approve revisions to policy 1410, executive or closed sessions and public hearings. Any further comments, questions, or discussion? Hearing none, we'll proceed to vote. All those in favor of the standing motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Motion carried unanimously. That brings us to item D on our action item list, which is conflict of interest. Dr. Sturm.
Yes, this is the policy that consolidates a number of related policies in the 1000 series that were all related to conflicts of interest. And so I don't believe there's new content here. There may be some, it appears that there's some housekeeping language changes, but the content is just a consolidation of other policies into one policy. And you'll see the rest of the list of the policies are to be deleted. Those are the policies that are consolidated into this one.
Okay, we've all had the opportunity to read these over. Are there any comments or questions or discussion concerning policy 1610? What's the pleasure of the board concerning policy 1610?
I would move approval of the revisions to policy 1610.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that we approve the revisions to policy 1610, conflicts of interest. Any further comments, questions, or discussion? Hearing none, we'll proceed to vote. All those in favor of the standing motion, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Motion carried unanimously. Thank you. That brings us to action item number, letter E, 1611, conflict of interest.
And
Mr. Chairman, in the interest of time, and since the E, F, G, and H all are to delete existing policies that have been incorporated in our previous motion, as I understand it, could we possibly act on them as in one motion?
Yes, we could.
My fellow board members don't have objection.
Would you like to make a
I would
motion?
move that we delete conflict of interest policy 1611, 1612, 1613, and 1614, in that they've been incorporated into the policy just passed, 1610, adopted tonight.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that we delete policies 1611, 1612, 1613, and 1614 as they've been incorporated into policy 1610 pertaining to conflict of interest and, how do you pronounce that, Paul? Pecuniary interests?
Pecuniary.
Pecuniary, yes.
Pecuniary, okay. Very good.
I had to practice that because I was afraid you'd ask me.
All right.
That to do with raising pigs.
Any further?
Looks pretty much the same.
Any further comments, questions, or discussion? Hearing none, we'll proceed to vote. All those in favor of the standing motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Motion carried unanimously. That completes our action items for this evening. We'll move on to agenda item number 9, which is discussion items. And that brings us to A, under discussion items, the purchase of property. And the presenter is Dan Hornfeld.
Thank you. As the board knows, we've been working with closing agents, attorneys, and a seller to purchase 12.05 acres at the end of the northwest Terra View. We're in the final stages of that. We did include a draft of the purchase and sale agreement in your board packet. We still are in the process of making some minor changes to that. The attorneys are speaking back and forth about fine-tuning some language, and we're overseeing that to make sure that we're in agreement with that. I want to thank Shannon for the work she's done, because I bring her exec summary, and then I bring her a legal description, and then I bring her a purchase and sale agreement. She's been really nice about getting all that into the packet, so I thank you for that. But Paul, Bob, and Diane and I have been working on this, and a couple of things that we'd like to call to your attention on the purchase and sale agreement. We've decided to and asked the board to approve the purchase outright of the property. We have the funds to be able to do that in the Capital Projects Fund. We recommend that. The staff's in agreement, the board's in agreement with that recommendation. And so on the January 27th board meeting, we'll ask the board to approve the purchase and sale agreement. We'll have a final copy of it, of course, out to you before that meeting. We anticipate closing on January 29th, which is 2 days later, and so that's how we've scheduled. I've been in communication with the closing agent as of today to identify that date and what we need to have ready and those sorts of things. So we're in pretty good shape. We've also wanted to make sure that we did our due diligence when we prepared to purchase this property. We had a phase 1 environmental study done by Strata Engineering, where they did soil testing of the property and confirmed that it's a good piece of property for an elementary school. No concerns there. We also had them look into wetland. Are there any wetland issues there? We didn't want to face that if we could avoid that. That cleared that test. And we've also checked on the tribal information that Carl supplied at the last board meeting. We've cleared that with the city. They saw no problem out there. They didn't anticipate any. They tie it mostly to federal monies that come in, but they also do keep an eye on those properties, as Allison had mentioned as well. And so we've cleared that as well. and in our communication with the city. And so I think a couple of things we'd like to point out. If we go to page 2 of the purchase and sale agreements, we're on page 2 of 11. Want to call your attention to the fact that we negotiated with the seller that the real property taxes would be prorated at closing. That means that it'll be brought up to date. At closing, we'll then assume the property at that point. So they will pay 100% of the excise tax in the closing. They will pay the recording fees and the title policy for insurance as well on the property. And we did agree to pay 1/2 of the closing agent's fee. And so I'm thinking that we'll have about $2,500 in closing obligation when we get there. One other point I wanted to make, or two, on page 7, if we can go to page 7. If you can read that. On 6.1, we wanted to call attention to the common frontage street agreement that we have with the seller. So the buyer and the seller shall each pay 1/2 of the expenses for developing the street. And in Exhibit B, which would be the last page of this purchase and sale agreement that we'll look at here in a minute, it defines what that means. And it is really based on code when you develop a street. So we would be responsible for 1/2, our side of it, out to the length of the property that we own there. On 6.2, the next one, we have a sewer lift station that's on the seller's property. They will prorate the cost of that lift station by acreage and pass that off to purchasers of property there. So we have a responsibility as well to pay for that. Now, we won't pay for that until we hook up to it. So just by buying the property doesn't obligate us to pay for that. But when we do hook up to it, we will. And that's at $29,000. And then we also had the attorneys write in that that would be the last of our obligation to the seller for any maintenance or upgrade or changes to that sewage plant in the future, that pumping station. So we held our financial responsibility at that level, and that's in the purchase and sale.
And is that eventually, that doesn't remain private, eventually that's transferred to the city, right, with the annexation of the property?
The
Or is
pumping
it-
station?
Yeah.
I can't answer that. I'm not certain whether the city would take that on or not without obligation of the seller. I'm not certain on that. But we do relinquish our liability at the closing by these statements that are presented in here. Let's see, I think I had one more. I guess that's it, except for Exhibit B. Wanted to call your attention to Exhibit B. We hadn't had that in there before, and that really is the elements of a common street construction that outline what we would expect to participate in when we develop that road. And so that's our share of our responsibility there, cut down the middle of the road by the center line, basically. So that's the purchase and sale agreement in full. We avoided a promissory note when we made a decision to pay for it at closing, as well as a deed of trust. So at closing, we'll receive warranty deed that will be recorded by the county auditor, changing ownership from Mater LLC to Pullman School District. And so
And then
July,
it's,
yes,
at that point, it's exempt from property taxes.
that's correct, yes.
Okay.
So January 27th, we'll be at the board
That's
meeting.
why the taxes have been paid by the seller up
That's
to the
right.
point where there is a tax obligation.
That's correct, yes. So January 27th, we'll come back and ask the board to approve, having supplied a final agreement to you previously so that you can have a look at that as well. And then anticipate, if you approve that, we'll anticipate closing on the 29th, that Friday, 2 days later. Okay.
And I'd just like to make a comment and thank Dan for the work that he's done on this. He's really carried the load on all of this, and from negotiating a sales agreement to investigating all of the various aspects that he talked about, making sure we had the test run that needed to be run, and contacted the city to make sure that this is an appropriate piece of property for us to build a school on. So thank you, Dan, for that.
Nice.
And
Thank
the
you.
whole scouting process that went in even before we zeroed in on this piece of property.
There are some footprints out there and around the city as well. But, you know, and I thank you for that. It's a group effort, because I can remember way back in the beginning, sitting down at this city, all of us, and going through communication with them, and almost daily communication on where are we, what are we doing, where do we want to go, how do we do this correctly. And so it's been a good experience for all of us, and I appreciate being a part of it. Any questions on any of the potential closing of that property? Okay.
I know that there's a small handful of minor changes. Can you summarize what the board can expect to see differently?
Can you help me with that? Because I was trying to think of that before. Because we had a couple that we took out today. And,
well, we took out, we aren't going to put anything in there about farming the land.
Right.
We're going to keep that separate and make that a separate agreement if we need to after the
To
fact.
do what, Paul? I'm sorry.
Whether or not the seller retains the right to farm it.
Okay.
Until we need it. And so that, we pulled that out of the sales agreement. That's really a separate kind of agreement in our mind.
Right. There's some language in there about no further obligation of contract beyond the closing, that we don't have any obligation to them other than what's in here. There won't be anything in addition to it. And I'm trying to think of what else we had in there. They're pretty minor, but I will call your attention to them next time. So there isn't anything real significant, but sort of fine tuning on a couple of different subjects.
Maybe for the next board packet, we can include, amend the exec summary to just briefly summarize and,
Sure.
and draw attention
Good.
for the board, so
Yep.
that they don't have to hunt through and
That'd be
make
great.
comparisons.
That'd be a good way to do it, and I'll do that.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Dan, I think, again, I'd like to second what Dr. Sturm said. I think I'd like to thank you and Diane and Shannon and Bob and Paul for working on this.
Thank you.
The timing couldn't have been more perfect. I mean, it positions us to be ready in the event the bond passes. If the bond does not pass, we still have a valuable piece of property for future school development. So it's valuable in itself.
Yes.
So
It was a great opportunity for us, and I'm glad that we were able to take advantage of it.
yeah, so thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks to you all.
Thank you. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Dan, appreciate it. That brings us to, under discussion items, letter B, which is policy 1111, oath of office. To present that is Dr. Sturm.
We had some confusion about oath of office based on our policy, so I went and pulled the RCW, and I just copied the language that we were in question about and put it in the policy. So it basically says that every person elected to the office of school director shall begin his or her term of office at the first official meeting of the board of directors following certification of the election results, which to me seems a little different than other elections. You usually start your term
First of the year or something.
on the first of the year in January, and I think that's kind of what we've acted on and had, but there, as we received correspondence from WASDA about oath of office in this last election, really didn't affect us too much because we didn't have change of officers, but it would if someone new had been elected to the school board. So I just put that in there so that for further reference when we pull this up and how do we do this, because we don't do it all that often. It's that piece of the RCW is actually in the policy.
Good.
Any further comments, questions about that?
Yeah, in my mind, it probably would never occur here, but it guards against some sort of actions by school board members that have been voted out at the last minute that wouldn't necessarily be in the best interest of the school district, and probably would have been the basis upon which the voters made their decisions and so on, and it moves that up from the first of the year, as I understand it, to when the election is certified.
Correct.
Which could be a month or a move up from a January meeting to a early December certification.
Oh, yeah.
It also, with the recounts and so on, it could drag it out into the next year. At least it's a time certain by process.
Yep. Any further comments, questions? All right, we'll move on to a discussion item, letter C, which is policy 1210, annual organizational meeting, election of officers. To present that is Dr. Stern.
And this one's related, and so I took a stab at clarifying some language. Let me make this a little bit larger so that I can read it.
Thank you.
Let's see. I just thought that as I went back again and studied what our practice needs to be, we didn't do this, and it's of no consequence because there weren't changes in the makeup of the board. But had we had a change in board members, we would have needed to do our election of officers in December so that the new board member is participating in, I mean, we might not have a president if the president was voted out, or if you see what I mean. So these two policies, I'm not saying it very well, but they really go together. Those two things, the oath of office and election of officers, need to occur at the same time, and no later than the December. That we typically only have one board meeting in December, so it would be the board meeting in December. And typically, elections being in November, and we only have one board meeting in November, there's really only one board meeting that we can accomplish this, unless we change the structure of how we do business, because it would be the board meeting in December that this would typically occur, as long as the certification is usual, it doesn't drag out with recounts and things like that.
I had a question on that, Paul. With our formula, with our district board members the way they are, it's possible that a new person voted in, depending on that area of the city they're voted from, could be the new president.
No.
No.
Our policy calls for reshuffling.
Okay.
The rotation.
When there's a new composition of the board, we reshuffle it every time.
Okay. Thanks for that clarification.
And I believe that, I don't know if that's in this policy.
That was my question.
There's a separate policy.
There's a separate policy for that.
That has about how we do the rotation.
Yeah.
Any further?
I'm certainly willing to be wrong if it's in there, but I don't think it is.
Could we revisit that then for our vote next?
Do you want me to send it out?
Sure,
It's current.
sure.
It doesn't need to be updated. It was updated right after
Okay.
Allison joined the
Yeah,
board.
just so if someone asked me, I know what I'm talking
Yeah,
about.
absolutely.
If the, I think, excuse me, but if the election certification was certified in early for some reason, and that person was sworn in on the board, they'd get their name in the queue before we had elections of officers, and so they would be in the queue already rather than
Right.
getting behind and being put at the bottom of the list.
Yeah, that's the way the policy goes, that, like, right now, if we'd had somebody coming on new, they would be fourth in line and you would be fifth in line,
Correct.
Good.
if it was one. And I don't know how we
That
decide
was
if two
most
come on
likely-
at the same time.
Yeah, they'd most likely.
Most votes
work-
tallied or something.
Yeah, work.
It's in there.
If somebody resigned and somebody was sworn in, you know, in October or November, they'd definitely be in the queue before the outgoing president. So that's just how it works. Any further comments or questions?
Try to find it, but we'll get it later and
Okay.
email it out to you.
Thank you.
Were we going to have an executive or closed session this evening? No. Okay. The rest of the packet, it just has informational items for us. It does not require discussion or action. They're included in our packets, and so you're welcome to take a look at those, and it has some informational stuff on current enrollment and so forth. So that concludes our agenda for this evening, so the chair would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
Been moved and seconded to adjourn. There's no discussion. All those in favor of adjourning, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion carried. The meeting is adjourned.